You said tonight that you have a feeling that things are just feeling, more comfortable, more smooth,
That's
a
right.
little bit better.
That's right.
But you don't have necessarily evidence for that. You didn't like see it on the
Well,
news. You saw maybe a little bit here, a little bit there. But there was nobody that came out and said, by the way, we're winning and we should all feel free and positive now. No,
hmm
it was your direct experience.
hmm hmm
Okay? Now, how come we don't do that more often? How come we don't trust our own personal experiences? How come we're always looking to somebody else to tell us how to think, tell us how to feel, tell us how to shop, tell us how to live?
because we were programmed, okay, to
Mm-hmm.
behave that way. The majority of people were programmed to behave that way.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, and a lot of them have already lost their sense of intuition.
Aha. And that sense of intuition, is it something that you're born with?
I believe we're born with it.
Is it something
But
that could, yeah?
over the years and not decades, it's
Mm-hmm.
been, suppressed.
Have you ever noticed a small child is so credulous and they'll believe you or not believe you without judgment,
That's right.
without like they're so completely pure. But if a bad person comes into the room, they'll know it right away, and they'll
Yep.
come over to mommy and daddy and they'll say, "I'm afraid."
Yep.
Now they don't.
Yep.
Maybe they're only 2 or 3 or 4 years old. They don't
That's
necessarily
right.
have the words to enunciate what the problem is,
That's right.
but they're gonna.
But their action speaks for
Their
itself.
actions speak for themselves, and maybe they don't even
That's right.
talk. They just put their arms
Right.
around you because they feel threatened by that
Right.
person. But then a good
Right.
person, a positive, soul, comes into their orbit, and they're like joyful and happy, and don't feel threatened, and start having fun and playing with them.
That's right.
Now, every parent, I think, has had a similar experience
Yep.
where somebody's come to the house. It might even be a relative. It might even be, somebody that's important. But the child reacted negatively. And we know we have to scold them. Oh, Johnny or Jill.
Mhm.
Don't
Right.
don't worry. He's the local government inspector, or he's your aunt so and so. But your child is just like repulsed by them, by their energy, and looks to you for protection.
Correct.
But then on the other hand, someone they've never met before,
That's
maybe
right.
not even your relative, comes to the door. It could be the milkman. And suddenly it's like, oh, no problem.
hmm
This person is welcome.
hmm
So
Yep.
there is another energetic reality, not necessarily one that we can perceive or feel or touch or hear,
Correct. Correct. I
influencing our lives.
Yep. I agree. Yeah. I agree. I agree. Yeah.
So what kind of
Fascinating subjects, but
yeah?
definitely worth looking into.
Well, I've got a little story to tell.
Please.
Recently, we've had a death at the monarchy level, and I'm
hmm
not going to mention names as usual.
hmm
But let's have a little closer look at what monarchies actually were and are. Did you know?
Sure.
Did you know, for example, that during the Middle Ages, the monarch of any given country, it didn't matter, uh, would have a court of followers, and
Right.
some of the court were ambassadors from other countries, and
Yes.
and some of them were just friends, and a
Yes.
lot of them were lovers,
hmm
and some of them were artists and
hmm
entertainers, musicians, etc. The
Right.
quite a large spectrum of occupations involved in the court, and of course including the religious figures and the scribes and the record keepers. But the
Right.
monarch never stayed very long in their palace. They would always move from one area to the next, one
hmm
palace to the other. And they didn't necessarily have their own palaces all over the place. They would just go and visit Lord Number One, Baron Number Two, whatever it was, and they'd stay at their place for a while before moving on to the next. Now, why did they do that? Well, in the history books, we're told that it's because it was a form of ensuring allegiance. Your main house was just in one little locality. But if you're the king of the entire country, you're going to have to go around and do an inspection tour and make sure that you've got loyalty of that particular, feudal lord in that particular area. But that's not the main reason. The main reason is because of the incredible damage that your court would cause. For example, there's no toilets in those days. People defecated on the floors, and there was no holds barred if you were somebody who lived off of the life essence of others. If you were a non-human entity that happened to be existing as an invasive species on this planet, of a possible reptilian type. In other words, you were consuming, just like a horde of locusts, leaving your waste behind you as you moved from place to place. So you have to go like 1 month here, 1 month there, because you're using up all of the children in that area, and you're using up all of the organic resources, food or otherwise, and you're leaving a trail of spoilage behind you, which would take a considerable time to clean up, and that's why you would move to the next place, just like as I mentioned, a horde of locusts. Now, people are not told that. They're told that, the royal families were such high people that would move around and I don't know, pay homage and give light and guidance and so on. And it's all a fairy tale romance. No. What it is, it's a pestilence. A pestilence that consumes and defecates in its wake. And that's what a monarchy is, and that's what a monarchy was. And when people look at a recent funeral and see it as some kind of situation that they should feel sorry about, I'm having trouble with that, because I think it's more like a situation that you should feel liberated about, something that you should feel freedom from. And I don't see, and I'm being very brave here this evening, I don't feel for 1 second an empathetic tear or an emotional loss for an oppressor who has left us. And I'm a person who was forced to give my allegiance to the recently departed monarch. Because I was a member of the armed forces when I was 18 and was going to become an officer in the Canadian Air Force. It's kind of like an ROTC that they have in the United States. But I wasn't able to do so because my eyesight was insufficient to maintain my pilot's license. So I decided to move to regular education system and regular university system. But when I was in them, with them, I had to swear allegiance to the monarch. And there was it was not an option. I had to do it. And recently I've become free. Free at last. And I will certainly never make that allegiance again. Because I'm not convinced that the monarchy as an institution has done anything positive, either now or in the past, for humanity.
Aiden, have you looked at this week's schedule? You have Spanish quiz. Did you study a bit?
So the point here is that how does one become a monarch? Was it done by a popular vote?
Nope.
Did people decide one day this was the hero of the neighborhood? This was the best person around, Did they do some deed that was heroic?
Nope.
Did they pull a sword out of a stone? Or did they bring rains during a drought?
Nope.
No. That's all just fairy tales and myths and stories that we're manipulated into believing.
That's right.
How a monarch really becomes a monarch is by killing the previous one on the field of battle. And the previous one became the monarch by force of arms as well. In other words, by using a bunch of their swordsmen, in the case of pre-technological times, or maybe it was just fists and stones if they didn't have metallurgy, in order to subjugate whatever people were within their reach, in order to enslave them, to work for them, and provide them with wealth, luxury, and perhaps soldiers to fight against a neighboring monarch who might try to muscle in on their territory.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a monarch is.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing but a gang leader. Nothing but a mafia boss who's using strong men and deceit and guile and cunning or whatever, just all out war, in order to achieve mastery and dominion over a subjugated peasantry who are doing their best to survive under this sort of horrific situation.
Correct.
So why do we
Yes.
why do we venerate them? I mean, the current deceased one achieved dominion over the lands and territories that they claimed at the Battle of Bosworth Field.
Mm-hmm.
Where they slew, I believe it was a competing monarch.
Right.
And I know the names of all these things, but I'm not going to mention them.
Mm-hmm.
And in other words, the people didn't decide. The people just trade one oppressor for another, depending on the outcome of some violent act.
Correct.
So, what's their legitimacy?
There's no legitimacy.
Well, there is a legitimacy if you believe that you're a prisoner under the machine gun or under the violence of an oppressor. That's
right.
Legitimate as far as a power relationship is concerned. In other words, if you try to escape, you'll die. And if you conform, you'll live. That's a form of legitimacy, but I wouldn't call it moral. I wouldn't call it ethical. I wouldn't call it humane. And I certainly wouldn't call it spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Because what it is slavery.
Correct.
Now, I've heard some people say that, oh, no, we've got a parliamentary monarch. We've got a monarch that's been tamed, put in a cage, somehow their teeth have been removed, and that they're not able to lash out and attack us at will, and that we're somehow got them in a box and we can vote to keep them under control. And if they're not under control, we're going to have our army is going to go against their army, and we might chop off their head if they misbehave.
It's only an illusion, my friend.
Well,
the
problem is
it was a make-believe.
Well, the problem is when that did happen in British history, which is what we're talking about in terms of the recently departed, that only lasted for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
The republic that was instituted by Oliver Cromwell didn't last very long, and all of a sudden, a monarch came back again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how the WEF did that happen? Oh, there's a hidden hand. There's a program that's still running behind the scenes to make sure that if the people actually do rise up and try to, project their power and their will, it will be swatted down and suppressed within a very short period of time. And it might take 20 years in the context of an ancient period where time moved more slowly, and it might be a couple of years in a modern time where things technologically move more swiftly. So when someone rises up and tries to, defend us against these oppressors, calling themselves monarchs, it won't be very long before you'll be coerced and suppressed and perhaps shot to death once again.
Mm-hmm.
So where doth lie freedom? And why do we venerate our oppressors in such a shameless fashion? Why do we tune in to the ceremonies of a dearly departed oppressor once again? What's wrong with us? What's in our sheep food that completely blinds us to reality in such a flagrant fashion? It's goddamn embarrassing. It makes me feel ashamed.
Yes. Yeah, me too.
So that's my problem with the current situation. I feel that emotional weapons of mass media are being, used against us in a most egregious fashion that go far beyond the reality of the situation. Because I can't think of a single circumstance where our so-called monarchs have done anything for us, except create wars between them. World War I was a conflict between cousins. You had the King of England and the Tsar of Russia and the Kaiser of Germany being all cousins related directly to Queen Victoria. So why are they fighting with each other? And why couldn't they stop their nations from going to war? Well, they didn't want to, because they caused it. That's them at work. And they pretended, of course, that it was nothing to do with them, but they're the monarchs.
Yes.
They're the ones with total absolute power. So how is it that they couldn't de-escalate? How is it that they couldn't prevent? How is it that they couldn't prevent or stop one of the most massive slaughters of the 20th century, which was World War I?
They don't want to stop, okay, even though they have the ability to. That's my personal opinion.
Greed for more territory, greed for more power, greed for more...
Right.
It's like a family fight. It's like the cookie jar. Oh, my sister got 3 more cookies than me. Mommy, this is unfair. Is this kind of petulant activity between cousins or siblings or members of the same family, is it acceptable when it leads to the death of millions of people? Oh, we don't care about that. They're not our family. They're just our peasants. They're just our workers, bees, our slaves. That's the kind of monarchy that's being venerated by the senseless sheep on TV today.
Yep. And that's how the media, the mainstream media, the TVs and the books and historians and so on try to keep us well under control and forever become their perpetual sheep.
Yes. And if we keep it in our minds that our oppressors are somehow our godmothers or godfathers or somehow our emotional guide stones or maybe spiritual saviors. I mean, if that's just so unbelievably horrific. It's like the what do they call it? The Stockholm syndrome, where if you're captured by a bunch of terrorists, you start to identify with them, and after a while, in a sadomasochistic fashion, you start to actually venerate your oppressors and enjoy the indignities of their servitude.
Correct.
It's sadomasochism.